Well, Surrey-Cloverdale is set to be another hotly contested riding in the upcoming provincial election. It was a BC Liberal stronghold for almost 3 decades, and that's until former Surrey City Councillor Mike Starchuk flipped it for the NDP in 2020. Now the BC Conservatives are running one of their most prominent candidates against Starchuk. Elenore Sturko is the BC Conservative candidate. She's held the neighbouring riding of Surrey South for the last 2 years. Mike Starchuk is the NDP candidate and the defending incumbent, and Pat McCutcheon is the BC Green candidate for Surrey-Cloverdale. All three of them with us on the program this morning to talk about the issues in that riding. Good morning to all three of you.
Good morning, Stephen.
Thanks for being with us. Mike, I will go to you first. The Conservatives obviously feel that they've got a strong chance of taking this riding. They have put forward an opponent who has played a large role in their public safety critiques of the NDP. A lot of these critiques have been echoed by municipal leaders, including the mayor of Surrey. Do you feel like you're on the back foot in this election when it comes to discussions about public disorder and crime?
Well, thank you, Stephen. I don't feel like I'm on the back foot in any way, shape, or form. I mean, everyone deserves to be safe or feel safe in their community, and there's still too many stories of crime. Whether it's here or right across North America, and we're taking action to fight crime and keep people safe in the communities and keep them strong. And we're focused on attacking the root causes. And I think it's starting to make a difference. We've hired over 250 police officers and worked with the police to launch new specialized teams, whether it's with gangs, guns, and drugs.
So you're talking about the hiring that's taken place for the new Surrey Municipal Police Department?
No, no, no. We're talking about the province that's there. The new Surrey Police Service. It's being completely funded by the provincial government. But I'm talking about the specialized teams that are there in the province, and whether or not it's going after, organized crime or money laundering. And we put in legislation that deals with the unexplained wealth legislation that allows the seizures of properties for those organized groups that are out there. And we just want to make sure that, we've heard it before that, John Rustad would cut the services that would help prevent crime and keep communities safe. And he cut funding for crime prevention and victim services, and he cut the prolific offender management programs, and he made cuts to crime and the street disorder worse, and we just simply can't afford that.
Elenore, do you think that when people are thinking about crime, they're thinking about proceeds of crime legislation?
No, I don't. I think they're thinking about Tori Dunn, a woman in Surrey who was murdered by a violent random attack in her home, murdered by someone who just barely missed the designation of psychopath. I went and spent time with Tori Dunn's family. I know that Mike Starchuk never showed up for that family. And it's with probably good reason. He probably can't face them, given the fact that I just heard him say that they're doing everything they can to address the root cause of these problems. But we know that in 2022, David Eby had recommended to him by the Lepard Butler report that he should put in low secure beds to deal with people with mental illness and violence. And yet he failed to do that. So we've seen time and again, for example, dramatically in Vancouver, individuals harmed by a person with a history of mental illness, more than 60 police interactions. These are the failings of this government. It's not surprising.
But what you and your party have been doing, Elenore, is, in fact, according to the most recent data, crime is down in Surrey overall. What you have been doing is exactly what you've done today in talking about Tori Dunn, invoking individual acts of violence and tragedy and making that your argument for your policy on crime.
You know what? Well, that's exactly what it's about. It's not about statistics, Stephen. These are about people.
But it's not about facts?
Regardless of whether overall crime, Stephen, when we're talking about, let's say, shoplifting, break and enter, but the things that people are the most afraid of is having someone break into their home and stab them to death. That is the reality. And the thing is that we can do a lot to prevent these deaths. And unfortunately, Mr. Eby,
are people
Mr.
really
Starchuk have failed to do that.
Are a vast majority of British Columbians in danger of having somebody break into their home and stab them to death?
I think that the vast majority of British Columbians feel unsafe right now. They've seen 7 years of the NDP, David Eby's catch and release. They've lost faith in the justice system. The SOS Community Society did a study. They did a survey that said that more than half of British Columbians fear walking down the street under this government. I think statistics aside, it's time for people to be able to feel safe. We need to restore people's faith in our justice system. And unfortunately, as a result of the things that have happened, and yes, it's relatively rare to have someone, cutting someone else's hand off with a limb saw. But the fact of the matter is, it shouldn't really be happening at all in British Columbia. And unfortunately, because of a lack of resources for people with violence and mental illness, these things have been happening, and it's time for change.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Mike, an opportunity for you to respond.
We've been hitting the doors, and I have never heard anybody worried about and making it their number one concern about somebody breaking in their house and stabbing them to death. I can tell you that John Rustad made cuts to the healthcare services, and people need treatment. Our communities need that, and he's made cuts before. And I remember being a firefighter when Rustad closed Riverview, and the people were left without proper mental health supports, and it put so many people at risk. But Stephen, I think it's absurd to think that's.
Sorry, you said when
absurd.
Rustad closed Riverview, what part did John Rustad play in closing Riverview?
Well, he was part of that cabinet that was there at the time that was making those decisions to keep those doors closed so the people couldn't get the help that they were needed, and we need more quality treatment, not less. And that's what we're saying is we just can't afford to let John Rustad take us backwards in that fight.
But what about the fact that, as Elenore Sturko just pointed out, we have these examples of aberrations taking place on the streets of Vancouver, certainly in Surrey as well. I mean, in Surrey, you guys, I don't know if it's exactly in your riding, but I wake up to a shooting story, once a week.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I can tell you, Stephen, that our governor, David Eby, and the BC NDP, we've led the push to get the federal government to make changes to the federal bail rules to keep reoffenders off of our streets, and launched like a dozen new dedicated teams of police and prosecutors and probation officers that are out there. So, I'm not sure, but Rustad would probably cut those services, because he's done it in the past with the cuts that he's made.
Let's let Pat in here. Pat McCutcheon of the Green Party. What is your assessment of public safety and crime in your riding?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, just want to echo, Mike's statement at the beginning of this program that every citizen deserves the right to feel safe in their community. They should fully expect that. But the next thing that Mike says is that he wants to drill down to the root cause of why we're experiencing a lot of crime, within our communities. And then he launches into hiring 250 more police officers. Well, those are kind of oxymorons. I mean, you don't drill down to the root cause by hiring more police officers. And this is where the BC Greens take a very different approach. We actually do drill down to what are the causes. And in a lot of cases, the causes are rooted in mental health issues, homelessness, and the toxic drug issues. And these are all very, very, very solvable problems. And, in fact, the chief coroner and our public health officer have laid out a playbook on how we can solve the toxic drug issue in this, in our communities. I mean, I've talked to firemen in the downtown east side, and they attend 30 to 40 overdose cases per day, and that's four firemen, $1 million fire truck, that zips to the scene, and then the paramedics show up, and then a police officer shows up, and they transport this person to an emergency room. This happens 30 to 40 times a day. These are resources that are being deployed to a problem that is solvable. It is very solvable, and so is homelessness, and so is mental health.
Pat,
And
I want to continue on that. We're going to take a quick break for traffic, but you have brought up a really important topic there, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. If you are just joining us, we have the candidates from the riding of Surrey-Cloverdale with us this morning. Elenore Sturko, Mike Starchuk, Pat McCutcheon. Elenore, of course, BC Conservative candidate. Mike Starchuk, the incumbent NDP candidate. Pat McCutcheon is a BC Green Party candidate. And Elenore, Pat just mentioned some of the drug issues that we have. We know that what the Conservative Party would do, which is close all of the consumption sites or safe consumption sites in the province of BC. Of course, you hear advocates for drug users saying that those consumption sites save lives, that there is a raft of evidence to support that. You don't agree with that raft of evidence?
So what we are going to do actually is transition these types of sites into hubs for recovery, for treatment. It's a process that'll take time as we scale up services to provide people who are using drugs. The fact of the matter is that what's been happening over the past 7 years has not improved the situation in British Columbia. 6 people a day still losing their lives. This is a government under David Eby that's been solely focused on harm reduction, and we have not seen any improvement whatsoever to the situation. In fact, we've seen a rise in street disorder. People are unhappy with the state of things that are happening in their neighborhoods. And the bottom line is that we're not seeing a significant,
But critics would
improvement.
say you're not seeing a significant decrease in the number of people who are dead because you're not going far enough, because you're not allowing people to use substitute drugs
Well, and there's other
and keeping them away
experts
from toxic drugs.
there's other experts who would go the other way and say that
I'm
the
sure there
excessive
are.
permissiveness of the NDP actually is contributing to a rise in drug
So
use.
what
And so
does
look,
one
we
of
just want to go a different direction. And this
yeah,
is what we're going to do.
I understand. And so tell me what one of these sites, these drug recovery sites, looks like when you convert them. What do you imagine they are?
Well, we're going to have to work with, the medical community, but look, they're going to be accesses for people to obtain medications, to be able to make connections. And,
So they'll be able to get
they'll look
safe
differently.
a safe supply of drugs there?
Well, we will be changing significantly the way that these type of sites look. Like I myself have gone down and visited. In fact, when I was in Victoria for Recovery Day, I went down on Pandora and I actually visited the solid site there. We want to change the way that those sites are able to supply people with recovery, access to treatment, with connections to healthcare services. What's happening in that area certainly isn't working. And we want to take a shift away
Mm.
from David Eby's drug legalization experiment to giving people drugs that they are not using and then trafficking into the hands of gangs and move people towards recovery.
Are
I
the
think
Conservatives
people,
prepared? Are you prepared? Because nobody talks about the cost of this. Are you prepared to pay for treatment for drug users through 4 or 5 or 6 relapses until they are well?
yeah, of course. This is
Really?
not, yeah, we are. This
And
is the
how
thing.
much would that
John
cost?
John Rustad's already committed that he would remove financial barriers for people to treatment services, to counseling. And, you speak of it, Stephen, as if, we should keep this barrier in place and be skeptical of people's recovery, their treatment, so that therefore, because it might cost too much, you almost imply that we should not do this. But
I'm not
our belief
implying it.
is
I'm
that
asking
people,
you where the money is going to come from. Because
it's
if
going to
you,
come from growing our economy.
uh,
Certainly we've seen from this government, the only way they know how to pay for things is by taxing people. But we're going to be building up, our natural resource sector, continuing to reduce taxes to, stimulate our economy and bring in more revenue for the province, something that this ED government doesn't know how to do.
Mike, the allegation is that the NDP has completely failed when it comes to the drug problem, and we are still seeing, after 7 years, 6 people a day dying on the streets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how closing down a supervised consumption site is going to save lives when it's actually doing the opposite right now. I mean, Stephen, the toxic drug crisis, the losses are devastating. I don't know of anyone that hasn't been personally affected by this. But I can tell you that we're taking actions on all fronts to fight the toxic drug crisis
But what you've
to
done over the
save
past
lives.
6 years hasn't worked.
Well, we've opened over 650 new treatment beds across the province to start getting those people that are there. One of the other things, Stephen, that we don't talk about very often is that, you know, there's a residential recovery program that's there. We've increased the per diem rates that are there to allow those people that are out there that need it to walk into a place at no cost to them to
How
put a
long
roof
does
over.
that take? If somebody wants to walk into recovery, how long does it take them? They can just walk in today and start their recovery today, can they?
I can tell you, Stephen, that we have places in Surrey where there's that contact where they could walk in today into a residential recovery place and keep themselves alive by going to see the people that are in there, the program that they have, and seeking the help of a medical practitioner to find that treatment that they can to keep them going. That's there. But I mean, we're working with police to fight drug trafficking and you know, and the 250 that we talked about hiring in the anti-gang units that was there that is also in place. So,
Mm.
so I mean, you know, we don't need to be making, you know, cuts to the healthcare system as John Rushdown would likely do. We need to provide the services in the healthcare system that we're doing right now.
Pat, I've got just a minute left for you, and the Green Party would expand the supervised consumption sites. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're an evidence-based party, and we turn to people like the chief coroner, the public health officer, for guidance on how to solve problems like this. And in their playbook, is, you know, basically suggests that we increase safer supply and also wrap it with all the harm reduction and rehab procedures that we need in order to keep people alive. I mean, we are not going to, you know, we cannot rehabilitate people if they're dead from the toxic drug supply that's on the street right now. We have to keep people alive, and that's where we need to get more serious about a regulated
Right.
supply of you know, of drugs for the drug users. And yeah, I mean, that's what we have to do. We got to get away. We have to, you know, we have to get away from the drug users
Yeah.
going to the streets to get their supply. It's
Pat, we're going to have to leave it there. My apologies. We're right up against the clock here. Thank you, all three of you. Very vigorous conversation this morning, and I appreciate it greatly. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. You all take care. Mike Starchuk, NDP candidate for Surrey-Cloverdale, defending incumbent. Elenore Sturko, BC Conservative candidate. She held the riding of Surrey South for the past 2 years. Pat McCutcheon is the BC Green Party candidate.